What's up coders, and welcome to the third video in the series. Now in this video what we'll be doing is covering styling and theming on the data dashboard. Now what we want to do is create an easy to maintain, easy to read and a visually appealing data dashboard, theme and UI. With that comes some tough decisions and introduces some new concepts and ideas you might not be fully familiar with. My background personally for the last few years has been a design systems, UI and accessibility specialist, and what I would do is I would go in, help set up design systems, help build up their UI and help audit their accessibility, give them a plan, train their engineers and do the same for UI and design systems. And with that comes a lot of understanding of how UI architecture should work, especially for styling. So we're going to take the approach of gradual styling complexity, which means that you don't have to take a one shoe fits all approach for styling. Once you get to a certain point in your styling, you might decide that something else is a better option to tackle this particular problem. So for example, with Material UI, you have your inline styles. You can use that to a certain point for non-repeated components. And then you can take over by using another styling option for whatever works best for you. In our case, it would be CSS modules and Sass. For some people, they might want to take for other people, they might want to take Tailwind as that approach. If they have a team that is trained on Tailwind and understands the utility classes and has very good practices in place to handle the markup overhead. So every styling solution is different for every team, but ours will be that MUI inline styles till we reach a certain point for non-repeated components, and then we'll be using CSS modules and Sass. So with that out the way, let's go over some of the things we'll be covering in this video. So obviously we want to set up our MUI theme. We want to have a light and dark mode, and we want to be able to toggle in between the two. We also want to set up our CSS modules and Sass in NextJS. We also want Storybook for testing and working on our components in isolation. And we also want to take all that styling and apply it to our project to give it a sense of theme and style. And we're also going to start to brand the project and give it a name. So no longer will it just be a generic data dashboard. We're actually going to give it a company and we're going to give it some styling. And very lastly, we're going to add some scaffolding to the dashboard. So we're going to add some grid components and layouts and kind of start to build the shape of the project. Now, before we jump in, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to keep notified of when the next video is coming and any videos similar to this. So without further ado, let's start building. So this is where we last left the data dashboard. This is the current state it's in, but we're going to change that. We are going to completely improve the styling and theming of the data dashboard. Currently you can see it's got some base styling right now. Look at all this spacing, colors. You can see that MUI is using its base default theme colors. You can see here this is a primary color being used, which is the default primary color that MUI uses. So there is quite a lot to be done here. But to begin with, what we need to do is remove the global styles that come with this Next.js starter demo. We then need to add our own reset style sheet and start to add some MUI custom theming of our own. So that's the plan. So let's go strip out some of the global styles. So we need to go into the source folder, and in the styles folder here, we've got these two CSS files, which we don't need anymore. So we'll go ahead and delete these. So you can see we've got an import still here. Go into app, and we've got the global here. Just need to make sure we're not using any styles. So you can see here, this Next.js app comes with CSS modules built in. So whenever you see something like this for a class name, styles dot something, main being the class name, styles being the default variable that it's pulling from the class name. So if I bring that back, you can see that it's pulling styles as a variable from home.module.css, and that's what CSS modules is, but we'll go into that later. So we'll delete this and we'll add our own later, but for now we just don't need this. So we'll save that and we'll go take a look at what it looks like now. Yeah. Oh, it's so much white. Oh, it's such a white background. Oh, this is quite the contrast. But yeah, so you can see the text styling, the spacing, the base, margin and padding, everything's been stripped out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of Material UI and we are going to add in our own reset style sheet. Now we're not going to do our own custom reset style sheet, so we're going to add the MUI reset style sheet. So how do we add our own reset style sheet? Well, the way we do that is by adding the CSS baseline component. And what this does is it pulls it in from Material UI and adds its own reset style sheet. Right, so hopefully that should have added a nice base to the project. Let's go check it out. And there you go. You can see it's added its own base styles. So I believe it should be using its custom font now. So yeah, it's using Roboto now. Now we're also going to do a few more changes. Let's put this to the right. A few more changes that we're going to do is we're actually going to change the name of the project. So we're no longer going to have it as logo. So wherever it says logo, we are going to change it to a new company. Datasoft just launched and did its IPO this morning. Not to be mistaken with Datahard. This is the real deal. There we go. We've got a legit company now. So we've reset our styles. We've added a base reset style sheet. The next part is to do some theming. So let's add some themes now. So we'll go here and we'll go to the theme folder and we'll add a light and dark theme. Gone ahead and added them already. So what we've done is we've created an object that would normally go inside a create theme object. So something like this. So this is kind of the inside of what a theme would be, but you'd normally use the method create theme. And what that would do is that would essentially create an MUI theme for you, but we're not doing that. We're just literally getting the options because we will be using a very custom method later to switch between dark and light theme. So dark theme, using the type of theme options because we are using TypeScript, and the very same here. So the primary and the secondary colors are different, and they're different for here as well, which is important for later on. Right, so we go to index here and we want to add custom styling to basically set up this page to be used by us. Now we removed the old class name here, but we're going to add CSS modules. So do you remember when earlier I said we're going to be very granular with our complexity for styling? So we're going to use inline styling with MUI as much as possible, which is in line with the component library. And we are taking advantage of the option to use inline styling, because at the end of the day, if you're using a one-off component that's not repeated, it's easier to just add the styles there and then, especially if it's just one or two properties. And then if that rises in complexity, you need to add lots of styles, then it's easier to organize that in some other way. So it's up to you how you organize it, whether it's Tailwind or whether it's CSS and JS, so you could use style components, or if you use CSS modules and Sass, which is what we'll be using. So I'll show you how that works. So for example, in here, we'll go and add a new style sheet. So we'll call it home.module.sass, and we will add .main, and we'll just add some base styling to the home container. And this means that it will only go to a certain width and it won't go any further than that, which means it contains like a container layout. We want it to be centered, so we want the container layout to be in the center of the screen. So if you have like an ultra wide screen, it kind of gets it to sit in the middle. And then we want it to have some base padding on the side. So when you go to a smaller resolution, there is some gutters for spacing on the sides. So that is just some base styling that you should have. You kind of should add to every layout to cater for larger resolutions and smaller resolutions. It's a nice formula to have. and we just need to make sure to go back to main and add the class name. So it'll be sas.main, and we need to import that. So we're importing that from the style sheet. And if you've not used CSS modules before, it is a bit of a weird concept to turn your class names into variables. But what this does is it takes the main class name and hashes it essentially. And I'll inspect and show you what I mean by that. It basically scopes this class name to this component, which is the index or the home component, which we'll actually just tidy up now. I believe we're just going to need to add this because it may cause an issue with NextJS. So we need to explicitly type that rather than implicitly. Normally you don't need to add a React return type for the function, so we've added it here because we need to add it. There's very few cases where you do need to explicitly say what it is. Reason being is React and TypeScript implicitly add the type for you for the function, so most times that's fine because React knows that's a React function. But in certain cases, like this one with NextJS, you will need to add this. I'll just put data soft here. I think that's everything. Right, let's go check it out. So you can see here now it's centered it and it's added some base styling. We do kind of actually want this to be max width, but I'll show you the CSS modules thing I was talking about. So if you can see here, home main. So this is the part that's important. So here you can see this class name. Now this is the main CSS module class name we added, which scoped it to the home component, and it's added a hash, which means that it is now doesn't cause issues with naming. You can have a very flat naming structure in your CSS file. And when I say have a flat structure in your CSS file, you can go here and you could add lots of class names and they can be very basically named because you don't need to worry about naming clashes. So you can say button, input, and it's just a much simpler way to code. You know exactly what the class names mean. You don't have to do some overcomplicated BEM structure or whatever. It's so much nicer and it's performant as well. So using just SAS style sheets is actually more performant than CSS and JS generally. But yeah, this is the one that I prefer, and I think when I'm working with larger squads and I'm building design systems for them and I'm setting up code bases for them and I'm advising on what might be a good system that could work with like 30-40 front-end developers, this is generally a system I go with, just because it scales so well and you don't have the overhead with the class names. But this works out better. If you know CSS, you can work on this, and it's great for juniors and it's great for introducing people of all skill levels. It's just CSS. Let's add a dark mode and a light mode. So let's add a toggle for that. So if we go to the MUI website, we've got this toggle here. So you can see this button here, and it's one of the default toggles. So to add this, what we'll need to do, we need to create a wrapper around the app component. So you can see it's adding a theme provider and it's adding some context to share some state to show that the this is toggled, this bit here. So let's add these now very quickly to our app component. So just above the session provider, which is for NextJS, we'll add these. We'll add this one first. So we'll add theme provider and we'll add it from styles. So that essentially is going to grab our theme, color mode context provider. Get that sorted in a moment. Right, let's go back. And we're just going to put this in our app component for now. So we'll go ahead and grab this, pop this here. I'm just going to rewrite this as well. Const app. Just making sure that this is also typed just in case. Cool. CSS baseline. What's the issue here? Okie dokie. We'll leave it as that. Right, we'll grab these other bits here. So this is essentially telling us to go and use the theme from MUI's default theme, whatever it's set to. And that'll be found because we've wrapped it in this theme provider. So we'll go grab that, and this is just using the context, essentially the color mode that's in the toggle below. It'll make sense once we've added this. So we'll go down here. So that should be there. We'll import this from MUI. Actually, probably add this here as well. Don't. So just so you know, system and material, they might look the same and they might have the same imports, but they do act slightly differently. My best bet usually is to go with MUI material or MUI material styles. That usually works for anything to do with theming. So that would be my recommendation, is to use this as your import source for MUI. It's annoying, I know, it kind of messes with auto imports and stuff like that, but you do need to double check that. So if you do find a bug, that generally could be one of the main reasons why you get an error. Right, let's add some code. So this is the toggle component. So we'll add the toggle component above everything. So we'll add that there. We'll need to import icon buttons. So just do this for now. We'll grab the imports for these. It's annoying that MUI icons doesn't really have kind of auto import complete. We'll add the box component. So we can add that individually, which is annoying. So we can add that individually, which is great. And then we need to add this function which toggles the color mode, which is fine. So let's go here and const toggle mode. Oops. Right. Awesome. So create theme, interestingly enough, I'll explain what all of this does. Let's import that first. Right, well, nah. Better not risk it. Let's get rid of that. So what does all of this do? We're grabbing the theme from the local theme, and then we're grabbing the color mode as well, which is the context state for switching. And then we're taking the color mode here, and it's using the state to set it to light and dark. It's currently set to light by default, but I don't want that. I want to set it to dark by default, and we want to set it to dark. Whoops. So if it checks to see if it's light mode, then we'll switch it to dark mode. Otherwise, it'll switch it back to light mode again, which is kind of what we want. So it's using the use memo hook to essentially run it once if the mode changes, which is this state here, which is set to this function, which is on click on the actual button itself. So hopefully that should make sense what this all is. And then there's just some styling and little bits and bobs. It's got a mode here as well, which is grabbing whether it's dark or light mode from the theme. The problem is the theme is literally just this. This is the only setting, and this is just creating a theme on the fly every time you initiate the component. Now that's not great because it's only got this option. So that means it's filling in all the rest of the settings and the palette details and the theme details with the default MUI styles, which isn't what we want because we've defined our own theme separately, which is the dark theme and the light theme. So that's a problem that we're going to have to solve in the short future. But for now, what I want us to do is make sure that this is all working. What's this saying? Let's delete this for now. Okay, what's this complaining about? Are we missing? Right, oh, we were missing something. Right, let's give this a go. So refresh that. We have an error, unknown error. So something is up it's not happy about. Aha, right, so you can see here we've got toggle color mode, and that's why it asked us to close it here, because we are essentially not closing this function. So now theme and color mode is being used, that's closed. That's closed. Right, this should, there we go. So as of right now, we've got this button up here, but it's not doing anything. So let's just go back and see why that might be. Okay, cool. So we just did a bit of tidying up. So I'll just explain what we did. So we broke up this component here, just because we kind of moved it from the default demo view. So this was basically block scoping all these values which we needed. So we just get rid of that. We didn't need these for now, so we can get rid of that as well. So yeah, that should all work now. So we can now see that we've got the dark and light mode working. So if I hard refresh now and then go back and go to dark mode, it now sets the default to dark mode. So now we have dark mode by default on our theme, which is great. But the only issue is we don't actually want this toggle right at the very top. We actually want this in the header. So let's go move it now. So we will actually keep these two here. We'll get rid of the component and we'll use it in our new component. So we'll create a new component here called theme toggle button. We will also add an index file, and we'll make sure that we point it to our component. Cool. So this is our component, and what we want to do in here is essentially put this code, which has our icon and which has all of these details. So this is our new theme button component. Now I'll explain what this is doing. So this is our functional component here. We are creating some props to take in the React context, which is the state that we'll be working with, and we'll be passing this in into the header where theme toggle is. So we'll leave that there for now, but essentially just know that it's got one prop, which is the color mode context, which is being used here. We have our theme being used here as well, so we are trying to pull in our theme, and we are getting the color mode from the context, from our context state. Now this here is quite an interesting one. So this is our this is a media query we're using, and essentially what this does is it allows us to check for the resolution of the screen, so the size of it. So it tells you whether it's in tablet mode, in terms of width, so 500 pixels, 800 pixels, whatever it is, in laptop mode, desktop mode, ultra wide desktop mode, mobile mode. You can kind of detect this with this media hook here, this custom hook. You can get this from pretty much anywhere and do it in a custom way, but if you're using MUI, you might as well just pull it in. You can import it with its own media query, so we can get this. Doesn't need to be destructured, and it just makes it a shorter and more neater import as well, so you're not just generally importing all of Material UI just to get the media query. So then we take that and we do a conditional check here. And if it says, if it's not in mobile view, then I don't want to show the label. So where we saw it before, it said like dark mode, light mode, it just gets rid of that. I'll show you what that is once we've just sorted out the app file. So in the app file, it's mostly left where it is, but you can see that the theme here has got a red squiggly line on it because it can't find the theme. Now before, it was essentially creating a theme on the fly, which was a bit of a problem. The mode here essentially had dark or light, and that was it, and the rest was default settings. So what we want to add is our light and dark theme that we added here in the theme folder, and we do that via this. So we get rid of this use memo and we add two. So we add a use memo that has dark theme chosen and light theme chosen, And essentially this is just going to choose our dark theme and our light theme. So we'll add that import. And hopefully, yep, that should grab it from the right places. It's using the aliases to grab it from a relative space. And then all we do here is we say if mode is equal to dark, we'll start that as the starting point. Then we want to show dark theme chosen. Otherwise, we want to do light theme chosen. So we're using a ternary statement to basically add the logic here. It's not a lot of logic, so I'm happy to put this inline inside the prop, but generally logic you want to keep away from the markup as much as possible, and you want to take that out and put that in its own function and then call that like that. That's fine with me. I think that's choosing the themes correctly now, but there's only one way to find out. So we're now looking at our data dashboard, and immediately what you can tell is that the themes are correct. You can see that it's calling the red theme, but we haven't actually added the theme toggler here, the dark mode, light mode toggle. So it's actually an oversight on my part. Let's go see that this is all correct. Grab that, and we want to go to the header. So we want to go to the header component. Oh, get rid of these. And let's go down here. Yes, let's add it here. So let's add theme toggle button. Make sure we add color mode context. So what we need to pass in here is essentially a prop from the header component. So if we go here, we can get rid of the settings as well. We don't need that anymore. We'll get rid of this shortly as well. We want to add some header props. So header props, we want to have the color mode context with the React context here. Add this here. So now this is connected. And then we just want to deconstruct it. So it's nice and simple. And then we go down here and we simply add that. So now this should be connected here. In fact, we'll close all the tabs to the right. Good tab management. That's what it's all about. Right, I think that's everything. So now we've got all this set up, and there we go. So now we can see in the header menu, we've got our toggle here. So if we click that, we currently see it's not doing anything. Right, so I believe the main issue here is that we actually need to get rid of this header here, because we're not actually, if you look, we're not actually passing anything to this header. What we want the header to be is actually in the app component, because you saw that the header, if I go back, I'll add this back, the header is actually restricted here. And that's fine, we want that layout component to exist, but we don't want it to restrict the header. So let's delete that from here. We'll go to app, and then we'll go just above here, above the component, and add our header component. Now what that should do is that should give us a full width header outside of outside of the rest of the components. But it means that now that we're in the app, we have full access to the context and all the state that we need. So if we start doing the toggles, I really apologize for anyone who's watching this in the dark. We see that it changes the themes, and you saw that it was yellow. We can choose any theme we want. So currently we've got like a dark, red as a primary. We'll slightly change the light theme to be a bit more tolerable. So let's go to light theme here, and let's choose background, and we'll choose default. And what we'll say is we don't want white, because that's a bit too brutal. We want something slightly grayish, because we don't want a full light mode, but slightly light. Let's go with that for now. So if we switch, so now it's got a kind of a gray version to it, but I'm happy with that. I think I like that. It's not fully a light mode, You can see some of this. I think this, yeah, this is a menu here that's kind of messed up, but that's fine. These are using MUI components. So I'd be interesting to know why these aren't tied into the theme. Let's go here. Interesting. Can you see everything else switches in the theme? So when we start doing the side menu, we'll tidy this up and get rid of this because we're going to take a lot of the menu logic and put it into here. So for that, we'll leave that for now. One thing that I do want to check is the responsiveness of this. So yeah, this is problematic here. We don't really need this so far down. Let me just grab that. So signed in a session. So what we can do is we can use mobile check here. And if it goes over this, then it just hides it. Sorry, if it goes into it, then it just hides it. So yeah, it's a bit too small. Actually, we need that a bit bigger, so it won't be mobile check. So we actually want to change this to tablet check. So let's change that to tablet check. And let's go back to mobile check and change that there. Oops. And then we just change this to 768 pixels. Now generally what you can do is you can create a standardized sizes for all of these. So in a TypeScript file somewhere, you could create a variable which has all these sizes in, and then you would just simply pass that in here, and you just pass these strings in to use MUI query. So you could put just tablet size, and that would essentially contain this. So that's one way of standardizing it, so you don't have to think about the actual sizes, and it's the same across the project. So tablet check should be done. So let's test this out, and there we go. That is a lot better in my opinion, and that looks good on mobile. Happy with that. Yeah, there we go. So we've got the themes toggling dark and light. We've got our theme added. We have the header somewhat tidied up and responsive. I think the next part would be to tidy the dashboard up a little bit, add some base, add a bit of a base layout and some base styling. Let's head over to the dashboard component or the dashboard page, and currently we've got it set to a H1, which is just that, but we want a little bit more. So let's update this. So what we've done here is we've added some basic box and grid containers. We've added some guttering with the gap property here, and we've added a class name. So we want to add some styling to all of this. So these individual grid items, we've used the paper component, and we've added the data card CSS module to them, and I'll show you what all that is, and that hopefully should add some styling. So let's go create that style sheet for it now. So if we go in here and we go to dashboard.module.sass, and we'll just create a dashboard module for it, and within there, and there we go. So the data card here, which we were looking at, which these individual cards contain 20 pixels of padding. We're also going to use CSS grid to arrange all of these, and we're going to use media queries, which is very rare that you actually need a media query. It is needed here simply because we're using grid templates. We could use autofill and all that stuff, but we kind of want this set in stone because it is a dashboard. We do want the slightly hard changes. We don't want it to be too fluid. I mean, it depends on the layout and the style and the design of your dashboard, but personally I don't think dashboards do well with that kind of fluid design where just things merge into each other and flow into each other. They usually are very tightly packed with analytics and graphs and things like that, and you can't really just shift things around so fluidly and let things collapse like that. So that's why we're using grid with media queries. So we've added top cards container with the CSS grid, the data cards with a little bit of padding, We've added some guttering here with the gap command. And what we're doing is we're just dictating the size here of this. So 12 meaning that within a 12 column layout, it's using all 12 columns. So it's maximum width. And then it's adding some margin on the top and the bottom for this component, which is margin Y. And we've added 2 of that. So let's go check that out. Make sure this is imported correctly. And there we go. So that's what the dashboard currently looks like. And my thinking is that with this setup, we can add some kind of graph here, a table, and we can start to form how our dashboard is going to look. And you can imagine that this side menu is now going to go here. It's going to start to really resemble a dashboard, and we can start to implement statistics and analytics that are going to be important to the Datasoft team. This super huge, really important big company that is totally legit. So yeah, let's check how responsive it is as well. So there you go. It goes full width in mobile view, which is perfect. And it works great with theming. So MUI takes care of all the theming for you because you're using MUI components. And there we go. So again, don't worry about this. We're going to take care of this when we get to the side menu. But yeah, this is looking pretty good. Now the final piece of the theming and styling puzzle is making sure we can work on these components in isolation. It's all well and good trying to work in the dev environment on the full layout view, but it's not always ideal. You kind of want certain use cases for components and you want to put them through the ringer and you want to test them in certain ways and states and things. And the best way to do that is in an isolated environment where you have full control. And that's why we're going to be using Storybook. So let's install that now. So let's go here. So we want to install Storybook. So let's install Storybook now. So we want to use npx sb init and click enter. And what that should do is that should go and install Storybook into our project after it detects what our current technologies are and our projects, and it will add everything related to that and things like Babel, Webpack, stuff to run Storybook and TypeScript, things like that. So that's installed. What I want to do is go and take a look at the package.json and see what it's actually installed. So if you see here, Storybook has automatically updated your package.json to add a whole bunch of things. So it's added its own linter, it's added Storybook to start as a command. You can even build Storybook, package it up, and use it as a demo of your components for your team or just everyone to view. Sometimes people create design systems and component libraries on Storybook and then just put that out there for other people to see and kind of look to see all the building blocks of how a big app works. You know, things like I think NASA do it, the BBC do it, the Guardian do it, the World Health Organization, IBM does it. So yeah, all kinds of companies do it. So yeah, Storybook's added all of these base add-ons in Babel Loader, Babel Core. So yeah, lots of good stuff. Let's actually run Storybook now. So let's just do yarn Storybook. That should open it automatically for us. And there we go, there's our Storybook. Now we can see that it's in light mode right now because we've not added any kind of Storybook, and it's got a default set of stories. So it's given you an introduction page as well, so you can update this to include whatever you want. What we're going to do is we're just going to go here. Should have added a stories folder, which is here, and it's got all that stuff there. We don't actually want that, so we're just going to delete that. And if we go back to Storybook, you can see there's no stories. One other thing I want to do is I actually want to add a very quick add-on. There's lots of add-ons out there for Storybook. In fact, I made a video about the top add-ons that I prefer for Storybook, so you can go check that out, and it will show you some of the ones that I use. And I've even done a course on Storybook, which shows you how I would set it up from scratch. But let's add one here very quickly. So just Google Storybook dark mode. It is my favorite. So let's copy that. Yarn add and then Storybook dark mode. Go back to here. We just need to grab this. So we're going to need to add this to the main.js. So we go here, and that should be added. Let's see if that's installed. That's still installing. I'll wait for that to go ahead. Yarn Storybook. Boom. And now we have dark mode on our Storybook. We can actually toggle it here. So if you want light mode and dark mode, you can do, but I like it on dark mode by default. Now let's actually add a story. Let's add the side menu component to Storybook. So let's go to components, let's go to side menu, and we will add side menu.stories.tsx. And this will create our side menu story. So this is our story. So essentially what we're doing is we're saying that we're creating this breadcrumb trail for our Storybook. So we're saying within the components section, we have the side menu. Pull the side menu. This is the template that I want you to run within the wrapper, within the Storybook wrapper. And it's just the side menu with some arguments, with some side menu props. Now it doesn't have any props as of now, so we'll just add that. So we'll add that in the future. So the default props are empty, there's nothing in there. And then we just say it's a side menu story, use the template, and these are our default props. We haven't got any, and that's it. And then it's just exporting that as that. Let's go take a look. If we refresh, we can now see that we've got our side menu. Currently, there's literally no styling there. Let's add a light background. So then we can see what it looks like on a light background. And that is the beauty of Storybook. We can obviously add some actions here if we wanted. If we actually had a bit more of a interesting component that did things, so like a button or an input or something like that, we could add some more. It would automatically add the options here based on the props and the attributes and stuff. Cool. So that's Storybook setup. And I think that's the final one. We're pretty much good to go now. So our styling and theming are all set up. So we can now actually start to build out some of these core components and get some really cool views going and start to transform this into a data dashboard. So there we go. We've now added all the styling and theming we need to get this data dashboard into a place where it starts to resemble some kind of analytical admin dashboard. We've gone and set up the theming, sorted out the styling, cleared it, added some base styling, even set up some components like the header component that has a light and dark toggle is responsive. We've tidied up the dashboard component. We've even added Storybook to be able to work on components in isolation, all whilst working within the paradigm of material design and material UI, setting up the themes on the fly with the toggles, and making sure that we have a foundation that we can start to build all of this on. So components like the dashboard, the side menu, the mobile menu, all these things that we can work on now in the future have a great foundation. So if you've been following along, make sure to subscribe down below, click the bell notification, like the video to support the channel, and try to stay in the loop for when the next video is going to appear. Also, make sure to follow me on the Hashton on Twitter, which I do post updates about when I'm about to release the next video or what possibly might be coming onto the channel in the future. So it's great for people from the Curious Byte community to go and get involved. But yeah, that was styling and theming. Make sure to stay tuned for the next one. My name's Harry, and this has been Curious Byte.